Hey, everyone.
Hey, Carlos.
So sorry.
Hey, Eric.
Hi, Carlos and Jody, and hello to everyone out there waiting.
Carlos, you're just going to handle the slides, correct?
Will do. Yes.
Okie dokie.
All right, so welcome again to everyone. We've got a couple of minutes before we get started, but just feel welcome to use the chat or the question and answer, and we'll try and manage all the questions and cover all the material. Thanks so much for coming also. And please note this is being recorded and will be recorded.
we'll give it another minute or so. Hopefully, I think the participant list is starting to like level out. My neighbor also decided to mow the grass this morning, so hopefully he'll be done by the time that we start. So maybe we'll wait like 1 or 2 more minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the FY 2022 Equipment Grants Program informational webinar. My name is Dr. Jody Williams. I also have Dr. Carlos Ortiz and Dr. Erica Kraus joining me for today's webinar. Next slide, please, Carlos. Thank you. Today we'll cover the NIFA overview, our program overview, request for application details, proposal evaluation process, and the additional information and resources. And then finally, we'll have a question and answer section at the end. So NIFA's mission is to look at the extramural science. NIFA is an extramural science funding agency within USDA's Research, Education, and Economics mission area. NIFA invests in and supports initiatives that ensure the long-term viability of agriculture. We provide funding and strategic leadership for programs that ensure groundbreaking discoveries in ag-related sciences and technologies so that they can reach the people who can then put them into practice. NIFA covers many topic areas across the department, across agriculture, looking at advanced technologies, education, food science, global food security in the international space, natural resources, health, human sciences, plants, farming and ranching, environment, animals, business, and economics. So just about anything you can imagine within the space of agriculture is covered by NIFA programs. I'm going to go ahead and segue on over to Carlos, who's going to talk a little bit more about the equipments program in particular.
Thank you, Jody. And hello, everyone. As Jody mentioned, my name is Carlos Ortiz. Jody and I co-lead this program. So the next couple of slides, really, I'm going to go over some of the details of what the program is about, as well as some of the requirements in the application process that we have. So I believe that this is the money slide, is one, if not the most important, one of the most important that you'll see today, because it really contains all the details that you really need to know and need to have be very well familiar with. Something very important to note is that the request for applications, the RFA, was modified this past Friday. And we modified it to make it more clear some of the project narrative details that we were asking about. So if you have downloaded the request for applications in the past, you may want to go ahead again and download the new version. The modifications are within the RFA marked in red. So you'll see what things are the ones that have changed, and the ones that remain the same are still black. So again, the deadline for this program is June 15 at 5 p.m. Eastern time. We're asking for projects. Each application is able to submit up to 2 proposals. Each project will be of 48 months, and the award limit is $500,000. Really, the goal of the Equipment Grants Program is to increase access to shared special purpose equipment or instruments at institutions. We are looking for projects or equipment that will support fundamental or applied research capacity at institutions. We are asking for this equipment to be one piece of equipment, or what we call a well-integrated piece of equipment or instrument, aka the applicant will have to make the case about how many different parts of many different pieces of equipment make an actual instrument. That the request for application has a definition of what that means. And usually I will say that what it means is that if you remove one of those pieces, the equipment cannot operate. For example, let's say that you are trying to buy a tractor and you remove one of the wheels, the tractor will not work because it doesn't have all the wheels that it needs to operate. We are asking that the equipment is acquired and is fully operational by the conclusion of the first year of the project. As I mentioned earlier, these projects are for 4 years. And one of the questions may be why 4 years if I'm gonna buy it the first year? Because we really need to capture what the impact of this equipment is in the fundamental or applied research capacity at your institution. Something important to note is what the program does not cover. So EGP will not fund the research projects or the cost of doing that research, right? You cannot include salaries, you cannot include consumables or any things like that. So it will fund the acquisition of the equipment. EGP also will not fund general purpose equipment that will normally be found in a laboratory, or you can buy easily through other funding sources, through other grants. EGP will not support the installation, training, operation, as I mentioned, consumables, so insurance, maintenance, maintenance of the facilities or the equipment or the research laboratories where it is housed. And most importantly, you cannot use funds to renovate facilities that will house this equipment. EGP will also not support the acquisition of a suite of instruments to outfit a research laboratory. So again, EGP is based on a single instrument or a well-integrated instrument. The eligibility for this program is actually quite simple. Colleges and universities are eligible to apply, as well as state cooperative institutions. So that we're talking about the 1862s and 18 Land-Grant institution, the certified college of School of Forestries, experiment stations, cooperative extension services, accredited veterinary medicine or state agricultural experiment stations, Hispanic serving institutions, as well as institutions in what is known as the insular areas, right? So these will include Puerto Rico, Guam, American Samoa, Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, the Federated States of Micronesia, Republic of the Marshall Islands, Republic of Palau, and the Virgin Islands of the United States. As I mentioned earlier, this is a limited submission program. So each applicant, eligible institution is able to submit no more than 2 applications to this program as a lead institution. So we ask you to please, if you haven't done so already, reach out to your Office of Sponsored Programs or similar office at your institution to see if they have a limited submission process and how do you go about being able to submit an application. The Equipment Grants Program also will limit the number of awards that we make at a specific institution. And for this fiscal year, we will only be making up to one award for each specific institution. There is no cost share or matching for this program. So, and any matching resources will not be factored in the evaluation criteria for this program. So some of the important things that we are actually going to support is we support the acquisition of equipment for either fundamental or applied research. So when we think about fundamental research, we're thinking about that increases the knowledge or understanding of the fundamental aspects of phenomena, has the potential to broad application, and has a positive influence in the food and agricultural sciences. When we think about applied research, here we're including field testing or expansion of the fundings of that came up from fundamental research. It may involve the outreach of cooperative extension service to uncover ways in which the new food and agricultural sciences can advance and benefit individuals and society. So here we're thinking about field research that is very much based. I used earlier the example of a tractor. It'll be one of those that could be supported through applied research. We have two different project types for this program. The first one is one that will support new capacity projects. This will be equipment that will support activities in either fundamental or applied research at the applicant institution. Enhanced capacity will be those where the equipment, it already exists at the institution, but it may need to be updated, or you may need to get a second piece of an additional piece that will increase the application and the capacity of the equipment that you currently have. We have a grant type for this program. So we are providing funds between $25,000 and $500,000. So the least you can apply for is $25,000, the maximum $500,000. Again, as I mentioned, the duration is 4 years, and we ask that the equipment is fully operational by the end of the first year. The remainder of the project period will be to document the impacts and outcomes of the investment at your institution. As I mentioned earlier, and very important, the slide here is listing some of the costs that are not allowable during EGP. So again, the research projects themselves, personnel salary, that includes the technician who may be managing the equipment, the installation and the training and operation to use this equipment, as well as the renovation of the facilities. EGP supports only the acquisition of the equipment. So that will mean the equipment that you have, you purchase it, you can include the cost to deliver the equipment to your institution. That's part of the acquisition process, but it will not support the installation or the renovation of facilities, or maybe like if you think about you need higher electric power and you need to make a renovation, EGP will not support any of those activities. It will only support the acquisition, and that means from the factory, the source that you're acquiring the instrument to, until it is delivered to your institution. So some of the applications details that we ask you to include within the proposal are as follow. We ask that all the documents that you submit are in portable document format in PDF. Grants.gov may allow you to submit non-PDF documents, but our systems at NIFA does not allow non-PDF documents. So please submit PDFs as part of your application. The project narrative is limited to 10 pages, and this will be strictly enforced. We ask you to please use 1.5 spacing in your paragraphs and 1-inch margins, as well as 12-point Times Roman font. Figures and tables can be single space, and they are also included within the 10 pages of the project narrative. Within these 10 pages, we ask you to please tell us a little bit about the description of the research equipment and the need that you have. This will include a technical description, why is it needed, where will it be, any comparable instruments that are close to you, and why do you need this instrument at your institution. If it's a well-integrated instrument, you really are going to have to define how is it well integrated? How is it that removing one of those pieces will render the instrument unusable? So we also want to know the research activities to be enabled. This is going to be a very brief list of description of the research areas, how will it advance the capacity of your institution, and potential contributions to the field. By no means we need a whole experimental design. We really want to know what topics, what research inquiries you are looking into exploring, and because we need to make sure that the equipment that you're requesting makes sense for the inquiries that you're trying to cover. We ask you to add a project timeline and instrument location. Tell us where the instrumentation will be. As I mentioned earlier, this program supports shared use equipment. So we need to make sure that the equipment, it can be used by many individuals at your institution. We want to know the administrative timeline and coordination and collaboration management and the project's sustainability. Since it is going to be a shared use equipment, what is the process that you have designed to allocate instrument time? And if appropriate, plans to attract and support new users. We also ask you to tell us a little bit about the cooperation and institutional involvement. So at which degree will this instrument will strengthen your institution's fundamental and applied research? What is the commitment of your institution to this project and the adequacy of the institutional resources, and the plans for the equipment maintenance and use for the lifetime of the instrument beyond the period of USDA support. As I mentioned earlier, there was a change to the RFA, and it's actually, it impacts these two sections of the project narrative. So if you look at the new RFA that was published on Friday, these sections will have red language, and thus have been the additions and removals within the RFA. As I mentioned earlier, it is 10 pages maximum that you had to write. So any applications exceeding the page limit will be returned without review. We ask you to please include a data management plan. This is an up to two page limit attachment where you're going to outline the handling of data generated by the NIFA funded project during and after the completion of the project. So you'll have to elaborate on how the data will be produced or acquired, managed, stored, shared, and protected. This is a management plan that is uploaded on field 12, other attachments of the research and related other project information form. So your Office of Sponsor Programs will be very familiar with this field 12. So please don't forget to include that within your RFA, within your proposal. When it comes to the submission process, we only accept electronic submissions. We do have an application guide that has step-by-step on how to fill out all the electronic forms in grants.gov, as well as examples and definitions of all the things that you need to provide. I mentioned earlier, all the documents must be in portable document format, PDF, because those are the only ones that NIFA will accept, that our systems actually are able to accept. So next, we're going to move to the proposal evaluation process, and I'll hand it back to you, Yori.
Thanks, Carlos. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the evaluation criteria and the process. I'll talk about the timeline and then go through some resources. So remember, in the next several slides that the webinar and the slide deck will be posted and recorded, as we mentioned. So and I say this because there's a lot of links that follow in the next slides, as well as QR codes in the following slides. So don't feel the need to break your camera out and start doing snapshots and everything. We'll be able to get you access to these links, as well as the QR codes after the meeting. Next slide, please. So in terms of the evaluation process, the proposals are assigned for review to at least 3 reviewers with expertise in the proposed topic area. Those reviewers will then provide individual reviews prior to panel for each of those specific proposals, identifying the strengths and weaknesses based off the evaluation criteria that I'll go through next. These written reviews are then used to begin the panel discussion that will take place during panel. along with other reviewers that are serving on the peer review panel. And then through those discussions, the panelists will come to a consensus on the final rating and ranking of all the proposals. Next slide. So there are 4 evaluation criteria associated with the equipment grants program: innovativeness of the proposed approach, potential impact on research capacity, institutional capability, and budget and cost effectiveness. When we're looking at innovativeness of proposed approach, we're talking about the soundness of the proposed equipment, the justification of that said equipment, the plan of operation, timetable, management plan, and then also supporting innovation and will it be able to use across disciplines, that piece of equipment. When we're looking at the potential impact on research capacity, we're looking at how the equipment advances the quality of fundamental and or applied research activities. Will the piece of equipment strengthen institutional new or enhanced capacities, or provide new or enhanced capacities? Looking at the existence and or availability of similar equipment within close proximity of your institution, and then also how this will align with the institution's long-range goals as well as USDA's goals. When we're looking at institutional capability, so we're looking at the capacity of your institution to acquire, install, and operate, and continuing to support the operation of that equipment. The degree to which that equipment will strengthen its research capacity, and then finally, your institution's commitment to maintenance of that piece of equipment. Finally, looking at budget and cost effectiveness, be sure to provide information on how the total budget adequately supports the equipment acquisition, that it's cost effective, the costs are necessary and reasonable, and that you maximize the use of limited resources. Next slide, please. On average, a competitive program takes about 3 to 5 months to process awards, and that's from the time of proposal until money is being awarded to your institution. The first 1 to 2 months, you're looking at the request for application release, proposal writing, that's where we are now, and then proposals due. So that's the phase we're currently in. After proposals are due, we come to another 2 to 3 months. That's when the proposals are under peer review. And you'll also receive proposal funding notifications towards the end of that 2 to 3 months. And then finally, it takes about another 1 to 2 months after those, you get that phone call to the awards are finally made. We'll keep you up, we'll keep you updated as much as possible, but please be patient with us. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer than anticipated. Feel free to shoot us emails if it starts, you haven't heard from us in 4 or 5 months. That means something happened, emails changed, we transposed some letters or numbers with your email. So just kind of keep up with us if it seems like it's been quite some time outside of this timeline. Next slide. Thanks, Carlos. And on to additional information or additional resources. You can go to the next slide. We recommend you take a look in our CRIS database to find funded equipment grant program awards so that you know what previous funded projects look like. And there's a link there on the bottom to access those awards. It's a public database. Next slide. Other resources, NIFA hosts webinars and events. Those can be found on the NIFA events calendar. Please also sign up for the NIFA newsletters, not only for this opportunity, as you well know, this one, you already know about this one, but for other events that are coming up, maybe associated with your specific area of specialty. Also, NIFA has a newsletter. It gives NIFA updates on what's going on in the agency. To find specific funding opportunities, there's a funding opportunities webpage. We have our upcoming RFA calendar, which tells you when new requests for applications are going to be posted. We also have a competitive grants flowchart. That flowchart provides you with kind of timelines on how things are processed across the agency. We also have NIFA grant resources and training opportunities. There's webinars that are there. They talk about how to write good proposals. They have the top 10 like tips on proposal writing, things like that. There is also application resources on how to submit a grant. And then, as I mentioned in the previous slide, there's info on awarded grants within our CRIS database. Next slide. If you would like to volunteer to become a panelist, not necessarily for this program, but if you happen to not apply for this program, we're happy to have you. Or if you're looking to volunteer to become a panelist next year, if you're not applying for the equipment grants program, we would love to have you. And also, if you're looking to be a panelist for any other programs, you can go ahead and use this QR code or the link below the QR code to become a panelist. It'll take you to the panelist information page, which will provide you with all the additional instructions and next steps for becoming a panelist. If for whatever reason you have any trouble, feel free to send any of us, Carlos, myself, or Erica, an email, and we'll get you directly to that link so you can volunteer to become a panelist. And I think that's the last slide. Oh, questions and contact information. Feel free to reach out to Carlos or myself. We're both the national program leaders for this program, or Erica, who is our program specialist for the program. And I think that is it. And we'll go ahead and segue, I guess, into Q&A.
All right, thank you very much for that presentation. And we do have a good number of questions. I thought, Dr. Jody, while you were speaking, I would further specify that when following up with us on any questions about any submissions, generally speaking across NIFA, if you could please reference the grants.gov tracking number or the proposal number if you have it. That is very helpful when trying to follow up with where your application is. So I'll just add that as my 1 cent contribution. For questions, let's see if I can pull these up here. We have some very specific ones. Are the costs of shipping the new equipment from the provider to the institution allowable costs on an equipment grant?
They are, yeah. So that's part of the acquisition process.
Thank you. Based on this presentation, there are a couple of questions related to this, but the focus on one piece of equipment, there's a specific question about indoor vertical farming. Would that be considered an indoor vertical farming container would be considered as single equipment? Or a second question, unrelated, would be two of the same equipment. Could either of those things, how would that be related to the equipment grants allowable types of instruments?
Yeah, so AGP supports the acquisition of a single piece of equipment or well-integrated instrument. So you'll have to make the case of, if you're requesting two of them, how does that make them a well-integrated piece of instrument? And the definition is within the RFA in the glossary about removing one piece if that precludes the equipment from working, right? So most often, and it depends on what the scenario is, buying two of the same would not be a viable proposal for EGP.
Thank you. Okay. In addition to the quote from the manufacturer, what other additional information are expected in the budget narrative other than, you're right, let's go with that question.
Yeah, so I mean, a quote is not required, but I would say it is encouraged. I would say, put yourself on the shoes of the reviewer. If you were to be reviewing that proposal, would you want to see a quote? Would you want to see what's included within the budget that is being requested? So within the project, the budget justification and narrative, it will be about why is that piece of equipment cost efficient? Why is it, let's say that there are two different manufacturers of that piece of equipment and you chose the more expensive of both. You need to justify why is that the best equipment and why are you not using the one that is at a cheaper rate, right?
Thank you. Let's see, the next question is where they can get this presentation, and I can answer that question. I will send it out to those who are on our list of registrants, and then it will also be available on our the program website. the Equipment Grants Program website. So it will be posted to NIFA later once we get everything turned around and web friendly. A following question. Would a GC or a DNA sequencer be approved in this proposal? So you might need to speak to, yeah, maybe this is an equipment related type of instrument question again, but also review process kind of question.
It is eligible as long as it's within the budget.
All right. So now, thank you very much. Let's see. There was a question about responding to previous reviewers in the project narrative. Our RFA does not directly say, do you guys have recommendations how that would be best addressed in the project narrative?
So I would just say that it's typically 1-page allowance. Carlos, in the past, is there a precedent?
1 page. Yep.
Thank you. There's a question about indirect cost for equipment grants.
No, there's no indirect cost on equipment grants.
Thank you. So a question about how much needs to be known about the research programs that will use the equipment.
Yeah, that's a good one. Really, we do not need to know the experimental design. The idea here is to look at, there was a question earlier about a GC or a sequencer. Is the research that you're doing using a GC or a sequencer, right? Like, is a GC like the more appropriate equipment for what you're trying to achieve? So it's really not about the day-to-day experimental design, but it's really in the broader sense of what topics of applied and fundamental research you're pursuing and how this piece of equipment can support and expand such research.
Thank you. Are stipends allowed to provide training on the new equipment?
No, you cannot pay for personnel salaries or stipends, or you cannot, EGP also will not support, let's say that you buy a piece of equipment and the company will include a training package within it at a price. You cannot get that. It's not an allowable cost. It's only for the acquisition of the equipment.
Thank you. Would electrical installation, such as a particular outlet, be allowable for budgeting?
No, that falls within renovation of facilities, which are not allowed activities.
On the NIFA website, we have a frequently asked question from last year. Do we have a plan to issue an updated one?
I'm so sorry. What happened? Sorry.
I'm sorry. There is a frequently asked question list from last year. Is there a plan to update that?
We certainly can. Apologize that we haven't.
Yeah.
Is there anything in particular that needs to be updated?
That's not in this, though I welcome that in the chat if someone wants to follow up with that. So it wasn't in that particular question. So I'll keep you updated if someone follows up. Okay, so there is a request to please talk about the changes that were made last Friday.
Yeah, it was so it's pages 15, 16, and 17 of the request for applications is a part that elaborates on the project narrative requirements. There was a duplication of information requests. So we just clear it out. We made it what we hope is a little bit more simple to follow and to provide the information, all the information in one place and streamline it.
Let's see, a specific question about obtaining a quote of the equipment or from the vendor, or would an estimate suffice?
There's no requirement to it. We just encourage you to maybe, and I think I'll put it as really put yourself on the shoes of the reviewer. What would you like to see?
A question about a walk-in cooler considered an equipment.
If it is for applied or fundamental research, and you make the case of it, yes.
Should it be one scientific topic proposal with multiple principal investigators, or should the focus be on how this equipment would benefit multiple different projects at my institution? Yes, that's the question. Do you want me to read it again?
No, that would be the latter, where a piece of instrument, an instrument is supporting different research projects. Remember, the idea for the equipment grants program is to increase the research capacity at the institution, and we support shared use equipment, aka that can support multiple research projects and research lines and topics and disciplines and everything.
Can we charge money for this equipment use at a multi-user facility?
Yeah, you certainly could. There are some rules and regulations of how to do it. So I would encourage you to talk to your office of sponsor programs. I would say something to keep in mind is the goal of the purchasing of this equipment is to increase the capacity at the institution, right? So how do you ensure that those who may not have the funds and they may need to produce some research data so they can apply for a grant, that they can take advantage and use equipment. So when you design your fee-based use, you may really want to think about how do you ensure that as many people have access to it. The fee-based use is a good model or mechanism to ensure that you have maintenance and supply costs covered, but it shouldn't be a detriment to those that may need to use that piece of equipment acquired with federal funds to get like a seed data for other grants.
Thank you. So someone has a quote for the instrument. It's valid for 30 days, but in anticipation of any price increase, can the applicant budget a higher price for the instrument?
Justify it. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have an idea of how much per grant, even though the range is from 25,001 to 500,000, are you targeting some value in particular?
We are not. So you can apply for up to $500,000. We don't have a preference on them. We don't have a preference. The maximum allowable budget is $500,000, but the key part here is you need to make the request that makes sense and it supports the equipment that will better support the increased capacity at your institution.
And there's a specific question on the changes to the RFA. Is the data management plan not required in the project narrative anymore?
So, and that's exactly the point that we changed, right? So the data management plan is not required within the project narrative, within those 10 pages, but it is still required as an attachment, a 2-page attachment to the proposal. So we clarified that part. There was a duplication of information, so we removed it from the project narrative, but we left it as the required document that is attached.
Will EGP support software and databases required for the application of the equipment?
If it is required to operate the equipment, yes.
I think we're getting close. Okay, can two different cameras integrated together fit the EGP? The integration is needed to obtain full details of the target species under study.
I cannot really speak much to it without knowing what the details of the instrument is, but that's the point where the applicant really needs to make their case of why this is a well integrated and why both cameras will be necessary.
If the equipment will enhance hands-on activities, opportunities for students through courses offered, can this be mentioned in the research activities to be enabled?
Yes, but EGP is not a student training program, right? So this will be kind of like the cherry on top type of deal. EGP supports research, applied and fundamental research projects. So of course, adding, training students when the equipment is not used for data acquisition, it's a good thing, but, it's not required.
Okay, so then there's a follow-up question to the anticipating the change of price of the equipment. Could that be included as miscellaneous is the question?
No. Okay. So it will be part of the budget justification to say, hey, we have this quote, but there may be an increase. So no, it has to be spelled out within the budget. What is this increase? Like, what is the extra money for?
Is it only those with current NIFA grants that can apply?
Nope.
I hope not.
No, it is available to colleges, universities, and state cooperative institutions with or without a current NIFA program funding.
Okay, I think if I've missed any of your questions, please send it back in. I think I've covered them all. Some I answered directly in the chat. Some I answered in the question and answer. Most of them we answered live. Okay, here's one that was reposted. A team might need more than one of the same equipment, such as a growth chamber, to be able to create more treatments, for example, screening genotypes for heat tolerance. So this is a follow-up to the question about getting two of the same equipment and how that might fit into equipment grants program.
Yeah, so I think the applicant would really need to make the case of that well integration, right? And yeah, so it'll be like having to really make that case. Typically, two of the same would not really be supported by EGP, but depends on what the justification of why these two pieces of equipment are needed for them to work together, right? Like that's the well integrated part, the working together part.
All right, so I'm not seeing any further, but please throw them in there. Oh, one more. So this, I think, is coming from if two institutions are working together, perhaps, but if another institute has successfully obtained a piece of equipment from the EGP, does another institute still good to request that same piece of equipment?
It depends. So are these institutions in close proximity? Part of the project narrative has to tell us about the availability of similar instrumentation in close geographical proximity to you, right? So I think you'll have to make the case of how having a duplicate instrument is necessary, and having another close by is not sufficient enough.
All right. Well, thank you very much. If any others pop up here in 1 or so more minutes, we'd be very welcome to have them. Otherwise, these slides and the recording will be available. I'll send it back out to people who were registered, to those emails that were registered for this webinar, and make sure people know when that's ready on the webpage. Otherwise, please keep checking back on the Equipment Grants Program website, and we will have this available. There is one more question popped up. Okay, how is the single principal investigator or project director looked at for equipment grants? The project director could be collaborating with numerous researchers. Is it necessary to have all of those listed as co-PIs or co-PDs?
Yeah, not really. I mean, so I guess the part here is the project director is the one who's like responsible for that, for the equipment, right? Who can make decisions about, you know, when you think about the question earlier about a fee-based use. So who will come up with the management of that? Who will come up with the data management plan? The rest of the individuals, the project director doesn't have to like actively collaborate with the other individuals, right? Like again, the idea here is shared use piece of equipment. So they don't have to be in the same discipline and collaborate in order for the other person to use the equipment. It's more about increasing capacity at the institution in general and making sure that the equipment can support many different research lines within the institution. So not only those that are actively collaborating with the project director are should only have access to the project, to the equipment. So it really depends on, you can include them if that's something that is required at your institution, but it really depends on their own institutional policies.
Does insurance on the equipment requested?
No, it does not.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Sorry, I got hung up on the words there, but yeah, no insurance. Okay, and Jody, thanks for responding to that. There was a question about difference between principal investigators and like key personnel or principal personnel.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right. Any final thoughts, Jody and Carlos? All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a lovely afternoon. Is the institution shared use required to be within the USDA strategic goals?
Not sure that I understand the question.
I'm not sure either.
Yes, we have that down as one of the evaluation criteria, is that it falls within the USDA strategic plan.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Jody.
Yep.
Can one request for equipment when the proposed project is not yet on? Okay, so if there's like a different proposal out that would need a piece of equipment, can the equipment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay. I think everyone's done maybe, but please feel welcome to follow up with any more questions to our emails, and we'll be happy to take them. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.